Hey, Katie.
Yes.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Do you buy this boredom thing? They were just bored?
You know, I don't think that the word bored is the correct term. I think that these were teenagers who didn't have productive things to do, as we see when teenagers aren't given productive things to do. But I think the key here that no one really wants to talk about is that these guys came from broken homes. The guy accused of pulling the trigger, James Edwards, posted pictures of himself, wielding firearms in an inappropriate and disrespectful way on his Vine account on social media. His mother is in jail. She's not around, so that means that he's not spending time with his mother. The district attorney said that these kids were running around the apartment complex, basically raising themselves. And there was a gang initiation issue here as well. There were reports saying that these guys were involved in gang initiation, that there were more kids on the list of people to be taken out that day. And it really comes down to, them not having the guidance that they need and not having more productive things to do.
That's a good point. There was one gentleman who's, I believe, one of his son, his name is James Johnson. His son was on one of these hit lists, and he's the guy that I guess raised the idea that it was a gang initiation thing. Let's roll that.
I don't think it was at random. I think it was the initiation.
Gang initiation.
Because I understand that after that happened, there's a list that so-called pops up with my son's name at the top of the list and 4 others they was going to bump off.
So you think that early killing, even though they didn't know who Chris Lane was, it could have been a gang initiation?
I believe so.
So, Bob, Mediaite, website for media hacks like myself, points out that the media routinely will, like in the Zimmerman case, will bring up race, but avoid describing like the race characteristics in Chris Lane's killing. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. But let's go back to the point about whether it's a hate crime or not. It seems to me once this guy said and he typed out that he hated white people, and I do think there's a gang, and this has an awful lot of similarities to the gang initiation rights in Los Angeles that I've heard about. Mm-hmm. I think that the Justice Department, at a minimum, ought to investigate the possibility they are dealing with a hate crime, even though it won't bring them the death penalty, which I'm against anyway. But it seems to me you could broaden this out to a bigger issue than simply just being bored.
Mm-hmm. Eric, do you believe it matters whether it's gang?
No. We're talking about who cares. It is a hate crime. He said, in fact, he tweeted, hashtag hate him. 90% of white people are mean or angry, whatever. He said, hashtag hate him.
He said they were gross.
He literally said, this is a hate crime. Who cares? They're going to get, if convicted, they're going to get life behind bars. They can't get the death penalty because they're under 18. My issue is that the media is not calling this what this is. These are 2 black kids. The shooter's black. He killed a white guy. He said he hates white people. I hate him. Hashtag hate him. This is a black on white violence that the media doesn't like. It doesn't fit their debate. They want to hear white on black crime. They don't want to talk about black on black crime, and they don't want to talk about black on white crime. The only thing that fits the rundown on MSNBC seems to be white on black crime.
What about this, Dana? The fact that it almost feels like, since the Trayvon Martin stuff, a game of like race poker, where I see your white on black crime and I raise you with our black on white crime. Is it just better to look at the decline of the family and a destructive culture than the color of skin, or is it important?
That's why I've always instinctively been against hate crime legislation, because crime is crime, and as soon as you start trying to define it, and then it's a race crime, or is it a hate crime, is it a crime against gays? Yeah, I think that crime is crime, and one of the things that does bother me, I do think it matters if it is gang violence, because if that is a resurgent problem in urban areas, or this was even an urban area. Okay, it was 40 to 80 miles, I think it was 80 miles from Oklahoma City. Boredom, I'm not buying it. However, there's not a lot of employment. You do have the broken home problem. There's not a lot of direction. And in some ways, I think we could take a lesson from our military. I don't know, I think Bob's not going to like this, but I just had this idea. Remember when General Petraeus designed the surge in Iraq? And the point was to go in, you had to stop the violence, and then you could then start to deal with the root causes, and you had to get more police into the community. I think maybe that is what we need all across America. And if localities and municipalities want to participate, then the federal government could probably help them.
Yeah, I agree.
We have a lot of vets that have come back. we could put them to use all of those skills that they learned, the leadership skills that they learned overseas, in order to try to help deal with this problem, at least stop it, and then we have to figure out the housing problem.
That's almost how they reduce a lot of the killing in Chicago, was just a higher presence of police.
And why were they bored? They were bored because they didn't have jobs. They weren't working, so they're sitting around doing nothing. How are we going to keep ourselves busy? Let's go kill some kid. Oh, here's one right there. I happen to hate white kids. He's white. He's running that way. Let's shoot him. Then we had the discussion. Remember, we had the discussion on stop and frisk, and one of the points we were making, or the point I was making, is that the crime was very much tied to poverty and jobs, more so than necessarily stop and frisk. However, this is not a stop and frisk discussion. It's simply, if we bring more jobs, if more kids are able to hold a job down, maybe they won't be bored and they won't be looking to do something as stupid as this.
Yeah, but you know what? You can't. There are a lot of people without jobs who are poor, who aren't killing people. And if you look at the parallel, crime is going down in the United States while there's unemployment, while unemployment is stagnant or going up. So I don't know if that's the case.
Well,
here's a question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, on that point, there's boycott. There's talk in Australia of boycotting the United States, saying it's a dangerous place to be, and I really don't think that's fair. I understand that this is now an international incident. It's an extremely unfortunate situation, but as Greg points out, crime in America, especially gun crime, has been cut in half since 1992. It's important to remember that this is a gang problem. We see shootings like this happening in gangs all over the country, mostly in bigger cities, but we do see these things happen in smaller communities as well. And it always comes down to a gang problem, not a violence problem.
Or
Bob, here's a
Definitely
question.
not a gun problem.
Here's a question I've never heard anybody ask. Why aren't gangs like the Blacks and the Crips, Crips and the Bloods, I'm looking at my handwriting, Bloods and Crips, not seen as hate groups? Because they essentially hate each other. Crips don't like Bloods, and Bloods don't like Crips.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose you could make that argument. More likely that they're engaged in an open gang warfare over drugs.
Yeah.
But let me make one point. Dana said the thing about she didn't like hate crimes legislation. I'm not particularly favorable to it, too, except that in some cases you don't have anything else to fall back on. Where in a state, if somebody gets beat up and killed because he's gay, for example, and they get away with it,
right,
then at least the feds have got the backup to come in and say it's a hate crime. That's the reason that I think it's fine. On the question about guns and what they think about us in Australia, we talked about this yesterday. A lot of countries in this world think we're crazy for what we do about guns here. And it is something that has been a major conversation piece in other countries, because we do allow guns freely to move around this country. And when you have guns moving around it, you're going to get people who are hateful people like this get their hands on it. And
we don't let guns roam around freely in this country. No, you're required to go through a background check when you buy a firearm. The only free guns that are roaming around the country freely are the ones that are being passed around illegally by these gang members. And I want to point out one more thing. One more thing to point out. In this exact case, a .22 caliber pistol was used. It is illegal to own a pistol until you are 21 years old in this country. So they were breaking the law there. Guarantee they broke the law to get it. The person who got it broke the law because they gave it to someone who's not allowed to own it. This has nothing to do with guns at all.
Somebody legally bought that gun.
You're saying,
you don't know that.
Saying ban firearms completely.
No,
you have to be saying that. Because if there's someone who can legally buy a gun, eventually it's going to make its way to a criminal or a teen who's not allowed to own one.
There's two places I'd like to see before we go to saying that handguns, which is impossible, that handguns.
So what's your point?
Well, my point is that there still is a huge loophole with these gun shows. Where in Virginia and North Carolina and South Carolina, you can go in and buy up to 7 guns without background checks. A lot of the crimes in Washington, D.C. emanate from those Virginia gun shows.
No, they originate from lax sentencing laws. When you're caught with an illegal gun, you don't spend that much time in jail. If there was a real punishment, they would probably stay. There'd be less gun crime because they'd be enforcing the actual laws.
I'll say it again. We said it yesterday. It doesn't matter what the gun laws are anywhere. Those kids weren't allowed to have the gun that killed Chris Lane.
They got it from places where it's easier to get.
Doesn't matter where they get it from.
Okay,
Bob. They can get a. You could have hit him with a sledgehammer at this point.
I had a firearm at the age of 11 to go hunting with my father, and never used it in a way that these children used it. And that's because I had not a broken home, I was raised properly, and I was taught how you respect firearms, and it was purchased legally, and I didn't break the law. So I don't think it's fair to say that, just because you're a law-abiding gun owner, somehow these guns are going to end up in the wrong hands. That doesn't necessarily happen.
I didn't suggest that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that outside of the gun argument, I do think another interesting aspect and development in all of these cases has been the social media component. And how, one, these kids in some ways are the evidence against themselves because they were tweeting and bragging about it. But also, if you have more of a rural community outside of Oklahoma City, it's easier to find out about what's going on with the Crips and the Bloods and the rappers and all that. Because one of the kids tweets that actually going to jail could help his rap career. Okay, so then, as they're trying to grow up in a transitioning America, they're actually, social media can become your own worst enemy.
Can I make one quick point? I know we got to go, Greg, but can you imagine if the races were reversed? Two white guys kill a black kid, and then they find this social stuff. I hate what black people are angry. # hate them. The left would be all over it. The media would be it would be the next Trayvon Martin media fest.
The conservatives are all over this, aren't they?
No, but I think the point Eric's making is that race would become a factor immediately in the reverse, whereas people are very, very shy about talking about race of suspects. For example, last week, 2 gay men were attacked in Chelsea by a group of 6 thugs. They were shouting anti-gay slurs. Christine Quinn, the mayoral candidate, sends out an email saying, you got to find these guys. No description of what they look like. None of the newspapers. No descriptions. Immediately in your head, you're going, why aren't they publishing descriptions? Because they don't want to, because it's politically incorrect to do that. We're paralyzed by that. We can't say what somebody looks like for fear of looking like a bigot. I think that's where we're at, right?
Are you asking me that? I thought you were going to get out of this.
I will now.
I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that you can't describe who a perpetrator is.
All right.